Friends, if you want to watch super hit movie How the Grinch Stole Christmas in English, then you must like this video if you are visiting our channel for the first time. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel, friends. In today's video, the movie we are going to talk about is called How the Grinch Stole Christmas. We will talk about what this movie is and where you can watch it all. The interesting facts about this movie. In today's video, I'm going to tell you, I am also going to give you all the information on which platform or on which satellite channel you will get to watch this movie. Also, we will talk in detail about the technical department, music department, pre-production filming, post-production budget, box office collection of this film. We will also talk about the story of this film, and I will also give you a small review of the story of this film. Apart from this, we will discuss about the facts of this film, storyline, star cast, actors' performance in the film, and which character has played which role. That's why I request you, friends, to watch this video till the end. So let's start the video. Dr. Seuss, How the Grinch Stole Christmas. Also known as How the Grinch Stole Christmas. Dr. Seuss the Grinch, or simply The Grinch, is a 2000 American Christmas fantasy comedy film directed by Ron Howard, who also produced with Brian Grazer, from a screenplay written by Jeffrey Price and Peter S. Seaman. Based on Dr. Seuss's 1957 children's book of the same name, this marked the first Dr. Seuss book to be adapted into a full-length feature film and one of only 2 live-action adaptations, the other being The Cat in the Hat, 2003. It is the second adaptation of the book, following the 1966 animated TV special. Narrated by Anthony Hopkins, the film stars Jim Carrey as the eponymous character, with Taylor Momsen, Jeffrey Tambor, Christine Baranski, Bill Irwin, and Molly Shannon in supporting roles. The story revolves around the Grinch, a grumpy, green recluse living on Mount Crumpet, who despises Christmas and the joyful residents of Whoville and sets out to sabotage their holiday celebration. Dr. Seuss' How the Grinch Stole Christmas was released on November 17, 2000 by Universal Pictures. The film received mixed reviews from critics upon release, with praise for Carrey's portrayal and the film's visual effects, while its dark humor and tone were criticized. It emerged as a major commercial success at the box office, grossing $346 million worldwide and spending 4 weeks as the top film in the U.S. It became the highest-grossing film of 2000 domestically and the 6th highest-grossing film of 2000, in addition to becoming the 2nd highest-grossing holiday film of all time, behind Home Alone, 1990, until it was surpassed by the 2018 animated version of The Grinch produced by Universal's Illumination Animation division. At the 73rd Academy Awards, How the Grinch Stole Christmas won Best Makeup and Hairstyling, in addition to earning nominations for Best Production Design and Best Costume Design. 4. Carrey's performance earned him a nomination for the Golden Globe Award for Best Actor in a Motion Picture, Musical, or Comedy. Plot: as the Whos of Whoville prepare for their beloved Christmas celebrations, the Grinch, a bitter and misanthropic green creature who resides in a cave on Mount Crumpet, despises the holiday and plans to ruin it. 6-year-old Cindy Lou Who, disillusioned by the town's obsession with the materialistic aspects of Christmas, has a chance encounter with the Grinch at the Whoville post office, where he saves her after she falls into a mail sorting machine. Curious about the Grinch's hatred for Christmas, Cindy learns from the townspeople that he was abandoned as a baby and adopted by 2 elderly sisters in Whoville. While in school, the Grinch had a crush on his classmate Martha May Whovier. Though Martha reciprocated his feelings, Augustus May, who was jealous that Martha liked the Grinch and not him, and frequently picked on him for his hairy appearance. In an attempt to impress Martha, the Grinch tried to shave his face but ended up cutting himself. When Augustus and his other classmates ridiculed him during a Christmas celebration, he snapped, declaring his hatred of Christmas. Ashamed, the humiliated Grinch fled to Mount Crumpet, vowing never to return. Determined to include the Grinch in the Christmas festivities, Cindy nominates him as the town's holiday cheermeister, much to the dismay of Mayhew, now mayor. Reluctantly, the Grinch agrees to attend, seeing an opportunity to confront his childhood tormentor and potentially reunite with Martha, now Cindy's neighbor. At the ceremony, the Grinch participates in various events and starts to enjoy himself. But His mood changes when Mayhew gives him an electric razor as a cruel reminder of his traumatic past. To further humiliate the Grinch, Mayhew proposes to Martha in front of everyone, offering her a new car as an engagement gift. Furious, the Grinch lashes out at the Whos, accusing them of valuing Christmas only for its materialism. He then shaves the mayor's head, lights the town's Christmas tree on fire, and goes on a destructive rampage before returning to his cave on Mount Crumpet. Learning that the Whos still plan to celebrate Christmas with a spare tree and unshaken spirits, the Grinch hatches a plan to steal all their presents, decorations, and food while they sleep, determined to ruin Christmas once and for all. Disguising himself as Santa Claus and dressing his dog Max as a reindeer, the Grinch descends into Whoville on a high-tech sleigh. He starts by sneaking into Cindy Lou Who's house. When Cindy catches him stealing their Christmas tree, he lies, pretending to be Santa taking the tree for repairs, and escapes. Methodically, he strips the entire town of its Christmas joy, stuffing everything into a giant sack and driving it to the top of Mount Crumpet, intending to push it off. On Christmas morning, the Whos wake up to discover the theft, and the town is devastated. Mayor May, who accuses Cindy for giving the Grinch the opportunity to ruin their holiday, but her father, Postmaster Lulu Who, defends her, reminding the town that Christmas is about more than just gifts and decorations. It's about love and kindness. Inspired by his words, the Whos come together, join hands, and begin singing Christmas carols, showing that their spirit remains unbroken. As the Grinch prepares to push the massive sack off the mountain, he hears the Whos singing below and realizes that his plan has failed. Struck by the true meaning of Christmas, the Grinch's heart grows 3 sizes, and he is overcome with emotion. Just then, the sleigh, along with Cindy Lou Who had climbed aboard, begins to slip over the edge of the cliff. In a moment of heroism, the Grinch saves both Cindy and the sleigh, returning all the stolen Christmas goods to the town. Back in Whoville, the Grinch apologizes and surrenders to the authorities, who pardon him despite Mayhew's demands for his arrest. Fed up with Mayhew's selfishness, Martha May returns his engagement ring and professes her love for the Grinch. In the end, the reformed Grinch invites the Whos to celebrate Christmas in his cave, where he personally carves the roast beast at the feast, now embraced as a part of the Whoville community. Cast Jim Carrey as the Grinch, a bad-tempered, devious, and misanthropic green-furred creature who despises the Christmas and the Whos of Whoville celebrations. Carrey accepted the lead role when he heard a tape of a kid's choir singing the song "You're a Mean One, Mr. Grinch." Before Carrey was cast as the Grinch, Jack Nicholson, Eddie Murphy, and Adam Sandler were considered. Josh Ryan Evans as the 8-year-old Grinch in his final film role before his death in 2002. Taylor Momsen as Cindy Lou Who. In the film, she is 6 years old, while in the 1957 book and the 1966 TV special, she is no more than 2. Jeffrey Tambor as Mayor Augustus May Whoville's corrupt, judgmental, pompous, rude, and greedy mayor, who was also the Grinch's childhood bully. Ben Bookbinder as 8-year-old Augustus, who bullies the Grinch in an attempt to get Martha to notice him instead. Christine Baranski as Martha May Whovier, the Grinch's childhood crush. She reciprocates his feelings. Mayor Augustus May, who also has feelings for her, but Martha dislikes because of his arrogant and selfish behavior, and also for bullying the Grinch into running away many years ago. Landry Albright as 8-year-old Martha, who shows affection for the Grinch and dislikes when kids at school pick on him. Bill Irwin as Lulu Who, Betty's husband, and Cindy, Drew, and Stu's father. Molly Shannon as Betty Lou Who, Lou's wife, and Cindy, Stu, and Drew's mother. Anthony Hopkins as the narrator. Hopkins recorded the entire narration for the film in a single day. Kelly as Max, the Grinch's pet dog and best friend. To play Max, 6 dogs in total were used. The main among them was a dog named Kelly, who was rescued from a pound by Ron Howard. The other dogs had their hair cut and dyed to resemble Kelly. Frank Welker performs the vocal effects for Max. Welker had previously provided the vocal effects for Max in The Grinch Grinches the Cat in the Hat. Clint Howard as Briz Who, the mayor's sycophantic aide and servant. Reed Kirschenbauer as 8-year-old Briz Who. Mindy Sterling as Claire Nella Who, one of the Grinch's 2 adoptive mothers. Rachel Winfrey as Rose Who, one of the Grinch's 2 adoptive mothers. Jeremy Howard as Drew Lou Who, one of the mischievous sons of Lou and Betty, twin brother of Stu and older brother of Cindy. T.J. Thine as Stu Lou Who, the other mischievous son, twin brother of Drew and older brother of Cindy. Jim Meskimen as Officer Lihan Hu, the chief of police. Mary Stein as Miss Rue Hu, the Grinch's schoolteacher, who later becomes Cindy's teacher. Deep Roy as Post Officer Clerk. Rance Howard as Elderly Timekeeper. Vern Troyer as Band Member. Bryce Howard as Surprised Who. Production, Development. Before his death in 1991, Dr. Seuss consistently declined offers to sell the film rights to his books. However, following his passing, his widow Audrey Geisel began entertaining several merchandising deals, including clothing lines, accessories, and CDs. In July 1998, her agents made a significant announcement. The film rights to How the Grinch Stole Christmas would be auctioned. The terms were stringent. Suitors had to be willing to pay $5 million up front, 4% of the box office gross, 50% of merchandising revenue, 70% of book tie-in profits, and music-related income. In addition, any actor considered for the role of the Grinch had to be of a similar stature to Adam Sandler or Jim Carrey. Only directors or writers who had previously earned at least $1 million on a previous project were eligible to participate. Several studios and filmmakers pitched their vision for the live-action Grinch. 20th Century Fox, with director Tom Shadyac and producers Dave Phillips and John Davis, pitched their version with Jack Nicholson in mind for the Grinch. The Farrelly brothers and John Hughes also submitted their own versions. Universal Pictures, represented by Brian Grazer and Gary Ross, also made a presentation, but all offers were initially rejected by Geisel. Grazer, however, enlisted his producing partner Ron Howard to join negotiations. Though Howard was initially uninterested in a live-action Grinch and was focused on adapting The Sea Wolf, Grazer convinced him to visit Geisel for a pitch. While reviewing the book, Howard became intrigued by Cindy Lou Who's character and developed a vision for a film with an expanded role for her, a deeper portrayal of the Who's, and a more fleshed-out backstory for the Grinch. In September 1998, Howard officially signed on to direct and co-produce the film, with Jim Carrey cast as the Grinch. It was later revealed that Universal Pictures paid $9 million for the rights to How the Grinch Stole Christmas and Oh, the Places You'll Go. Before Howard's involvement, Tim Burton was approached to direct, but turned down the offer due to a scheduling conflict with Sleepy Hollow. The final screenplay, written by Jeffrey Price and Peter S. Seaman, known for Who Framed Roger Rabbit and Doc Hollywood, underwent 8 drafts before reaching a final version. Audrey Geisel had significant control over the script, vetoing several jokes she found inappropriate, including one about a family called the Whosteens who lacked a Christmas tree and presents. Additionally, she rejected the inclusion of a stuffed trophy of the Cat in the Hat on the Grinch's wall. Alec Berg, David Mandel, and Jeff Schaffer, writers from Seinfeld, contributed to an uncredited rewrite. Filming and makeup. Principal photography for How the Grinch Stole Christmas took place from September 1999 to January 2000. Audrey Geisel, Dr. Seuss's widow, visited the set in October 1999. The majority of the Whoville set was constructed on the Universal Studios backlot, located behind the iconic Bates Motel set from Psycho 1960. Rick Baker, the renowned makeup artist, was responsible for designing and creating the prosthetic makeup for Jim Carrey and the rest of the cast. After several tests, Carrey was impressed by a photo of Baker's first makeup test, leading to the decision to use Baker's initial design. The Grinch costume was made of yak hair, dyed green, and sewn onto a spandex suit. The makeup application process for Carrey took up to 2.5 hours each day, and Carrey often compared wearing the costume to being buried alive. In his frustration, he once kicked a hole in the wall of his trailer. Kazuhiro, Carrey's makeup artist, recalled that Carrey was initially difficult to work with on set, often being irritable and disappearing during shoots. This led to significant production delays, with only 3 days' worth of footage being completed after 2 weeks of filming. Hiro eventually left the production, but after discussions with Ron Howard and Baker, Carrey agreed to control his temper, and Hiro returned to the set. To help Carrey cope with the grueling makeup process, producer Brian Grazer hired a consultant to train him in methods for enduring torture. Josh Ryan Evans, who portrayed the 8-year-old Grinch, wore the same type of makeup and bodysuit as Carrey. Over the course of filming, Carrey spent 92 days in Grinch makeup and eventually became more comfortable with the process. Most of the makeup appliances used for the actors were connected to their upper lips, along with prosthetic noses, ears, dentures, and wigs. To keep Carrey's spirits up during production, Howard once donned a Grinch suit himself, and on another occasion, he invited actor Don Knotts to the set, knowing Carrey was a fan of Knotts' work. Carrey also wore uncomfortable yellow contact lenses for his portrayal of the Grinch, but due to the discomfort, many scenes required post-production digital alterations to color his eyes. During one scene where the Grinch is directing his dog, Max, Carrey improvised by mimicking Howard's directing style. Howard found the impression hilarious and decided to include the moment in the final cut of the film. Visual effects. The film's visual effects were provided by Digital Domain. Digital Domain crafted intricate CGI environments and characters, seamlessly integrating them with live-action elements to preserve the magical and whimsical atmosphere of Whoville. The team employed cutting-edge technology to enhance the film's fantastical setting, ensuring it aligned with Dr. Seuss' iconic illustrations. In addition to the visual effects, the movie relied heavily on practical effects and extensive makeup to transform Jim Carrey into the Grinch. This involved hours of makeup application using pioneering techniques that allowed for flexibility in Carrey's facial expressions, enabling him to maintain his comedic timing and exaggerated movements despite the prosthetics. Music. The soundtrack for the album was released on November 7, 2000. It features a collection of music performed by several artists, including Busta Rhymes, Faith Hill, Eels, Smash Mouth, and NSYNC. An expanded edition of the soundtrack featuring more cues from Horner's score was released on November 1, 2022, on La La Land Records. All song lengths via Apple Music. All music is composed by James Horner except where noted. Release. Theatrical. How the Grinch Stole Christmas was first screened on November 8th at the Universal Amphitheater to the cast and crew, as well as others in the industry, including Will Smith. How the Grinch Stole Christmas was theatrically released by Universal Pictures in the United States and Canada on November 17, 2000. Then, on November 23, 2000, it was released in Germany, and 1 week later, on November 30th, it was released in Argentina, Australia, Malaysia, and Netherlands. Later on December 1, 2000, the film received widespread release in the United Kingdom, Denmark, Spain, Finland, Greece, Ireland, Israel, Mexico, Norway, Poland, Portugal, Sweden, Uruguay, and South Africa. Throughout December, the film would also be released in France, Croatia, Chile, Hungary, Brazil, Japan, South Korea, Russia, as well as others. How the Grinch Stole Christmas was later re-released in Germany on November 15, 2001. Television. How the Grinch Stole Christmas premiered on television on ABC on November 25, 2004, and aired there until 2014, with the exception of 2009. From 2010 to 2014, it was paired with the animated television special, airing annually as part of ABC Family's 25 Days of Christmas, which later became Freeform's event. During its airings, additional deleted scenes were featured that were not part of the original theatrical, VHS, or DVD releases. These included extended sequences such as Cindy's dad maxing out his credit card on gifts, Cindy inquiring about the Grinch before school, Lou visiting Cindy after she stayed late at school, and extended Grinch scenes in his cave and at the Christmas party. Other added content involved Martha May and Betty Lou competing in the Christmas Lights contest, the Grinch trying on different outfits, and various moments showing the Who's preparing for Christmas. Since 2015, How the Grinch Stole Christmas has aired on NBC on Christmas night, typically following the animated television special. However, it did not air in 2022 due to an NFL game between the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Arizona Cardinals. In 2020, it aired on FX to promote the television premiere of the 2018 animated film of The Grinch. Marketing. In the summer of 2000, a trailer for How the Grinch Stole Christmas premiered in theaters, attached to screenings of Mission Impossible 2. This was part of an agreement between Paramount Pictures and Universal Pictures. in which Paramount agreed to show the Grinch trailer in exchange for Universal screening a Paramount trailer in front of Nutty Professor 2, The Clumps. A second trailer debuted on October 6, 2000, along with the release of Meet the Parents. Simultaneously, Toys R Us launched a massive promotional campaign for the film, transforming their stores into Whobilation headquarters with one of the most elaborate visual merchandising displays in the company's history. Stores featured floor-to-ceiling window graphics of the film's characters, and in some locations, 8-foot 3D Grinch-themed characters adorned the entrances. Wendy's also joined the promotion, offering kids' meal toys featuring the Grinch. Additional promotional partners included Kellogg's, Nabisco, Hershey's, Visa, Coca-Cola, and United States Postal Service. To further coincide with the film's release, Universal Studios Hollywood and Universal's Islands of Adventure introduced Grinchmas, a holiday event that has since become an annual tradition at the theme parks. Home media: How the Grinch Stole Christmas was released on VHS and DVD on November 20, 2001. In its first week of release, it sold a combined total of 8.5 million home video units, including 3 million DVDs and 4 million VHS copies, making it the best-selling holiday home video title at that time. The film became one of only 4 titles, alongside Star Wars, Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, Shrek, and The Mummy Returns, to sell more than 2 million DVD copies during their opening weeks. It also achieved the distinction of being the second highest opening week home video sales for any live-action film, following Titanic. In December 2001, Variety reported that the film was the second biggest-selling home video release of the year, with 16.9 million copies sold and $296 million in revenue. A Blu-ray DVD combo pack was released on October 13, 2009, followed by a digitally remastered Blu-ray release on October 13, 2015. The film was also remastered in 4K and released on Ultra HD Blu-ray on October 17, 2017. Reception: Box office: How the Grinch Stole Christmas grossed $260 million domestically and $85.1 million in other territories, resulting in a worldwide gross of $345.1 million, making it the 6th highest grossing film of 2000. In the United States, the film debuted at number 1 on its opening day, earning $15.6 million. Over the weekend, it grossed $55.1 million, with an average of $17,650 from 3,127 theaters. At the time of its release, it held the 6th highest 3-day opening weekend of any film, trailing behind Toy Story 2, X-Men, Mission Impossible 2, Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, and The Lost World: Jurassic Park. Additionally, it surpassed Batman Forever to secure the largest opening weekend for a Jim Carrey film and set a new record for Ron Howard's highest-grossing opening weekend, overtaking Ransom 1996. The film became the first non-Disney film to top the Thanksgiving weekend box office since Mrs. Doubtfire in 1993. It held the record for the highest opening weekend for a Christmas-themed film for 18 years, until the 2018 animated version of The Grinch surpassed it with $67.6 million. In its second weekend, the film grossed $52.1 million, dropping just 5.1%, setting a record for the highest-grossing second weekend for any film at that time, surpassing The Phantom Menace. It remained at the top of the box office for 4 weekends, until it was overtaken by What Women Want and Dude, Where's My Car in mid-December. It continued to draw holiday crowds, outperforming another family film, The Emperor's New Groove. By then, it had surpassed Mission Impossible 2 to become the top-grossing film of the year. The film ended its theatrical run on March 1, 2001, with a final domestic gross of $244,825. Box Office Mojo estimates that the film sold over 48 million tickets in North America. Critical response: on Rotten Tomatoes, How the Grinch Stole Christmas holds an approval rating of 49% based on 144 reviews with an average rating of 5.6/10. The site's critical consensus reads, Jim Carrey shines as the Grinch. Unfortunately, it's not enough to save this movie. You'd be better off watching the TV cartoon. On Metacritic, the film has a weighted average score of 46 out of 100 based on 29 critics, indicating mixed or average reviews. Audiences polled by CinemaScore gave the film an average grade of A- on an A+ to F scale. Roger Ebert gave the film 2 out of 4 stars, describing it as a dank, eerie, weird movie about a sour creature, and noting that the production design lacked the festive brightness that the material required. Ebert remarked that Carrey works as hard as an actor has ever worked in a movie to small avail, but noted that adults might appreciate Carrey's effort in an intellectual sort of way. Paul Clinton of CNN highlighted Carrey's dominance in the film, stating that Carrey was born to play this role, and adding that if he's not in the scene, there is no scene. Similarly, Owen Gleiberman of Entertainment Weekly commented on the Grinch's mischievously divided personality and praised how Carrey's performance transitions from chaotic to heartfelt, concluding that Carrey carries the movie. Sick. By skillfully balancing his wild antics with a genuine emotional turn. Peter Stack of the San Francisco Chronicle said, "Nobody could play the Grinch better than Jim Carrey, whose rubbery antics and maniacal sense of mischief are so well suited to How the Grinch Stole Christmas. Dr. Seuss himself might have turned to Carrey as a model for the classic curmudgeon had the actor been around in 1957. However, he wondered why Carrey made himself sound like Sean Connery, and warned that the character's intensity may frighten small children." James Berardinelli of Real Views wrote that Carrey's off-the-wall performance is reminiscent of what he accomplished in The Mask, except that here he never allows the special effects to upstage him. Carrey's Grinch is a combination of Seuss's creation and Carrey's personality, with a voice that sounds far more like a weird amalgamation of Sean Connery and Jim Backus, Bond meets Magoo, than it does Karloff. He concluded that Carrey brings animation to the live action, and, surrounded by glittering, fantastical sets and computer-spun special effects, Carrey enables Ron Howard's version of the classic story to come across as more of a welcome endeavor than a pointless retread. Other reviews were more mixed. Stephanie Zacharek of Salon criticized the film, writing that Carrey pulls off an admirable impersonation of an animated figure. It's fine as mimicry goes, but mimicry isn't the best playground for comic genius. While acknowledging a few terrific ad-libs, she felt Carrey's jokes were nothing more than a desperate effort to inject some offbeat humor into an otherwise numbingly unhip, nonsensical, and just plain dull story. Todd McCarthy of Variety echoed some of these sentiments, noting that Carrey tries out all sorts of intonations, vocal pitches, and delivery styles in his performance, at times reminding viewers of James Cagney and Humphrey Bogart. However, McCarthy felt that while Carrey's antics hit the mark at times, they also seemed arbitrary and scattershot. He further commented that Carrey's free-flowing tirades, full of catch-all allusions and references, are pitched for adult appreciation and were likely to sail right over the heads of preteens. The Grinch Who Stole Christmas has a reason for growing up to be so bitter. As a child, he was picked on for being green and having hair all over his body and a beard. Show me the child who would not pick on such a classmate, and I will show you baby Jesus. But if Dr. Seuss's How the Grinch Stole Christmas had only worked on that angle some more, had drummed up a little more sympathy for the Grinch, maybe we wouldn't want to pick on him too. This is a movie that devotes enormous resources to the mistaken belief that children and their parents want to see a dank, eerie, weird movie about a sour creature who lives on top of a mountain of garbage, scares children, is mean to his dog, and steals everyone's Christmas presents. Yes, there's a happy ending, and even a saintly little girl who believes the Grinch may not be all bad. But there's not much happiness before the ending, and the little girl is more of a plot device than a character. The Grinch is played by Jim Carrey, who works as hard as an actor has ever worked in a movie, to small avail. He leaps, he tumbles, he contorts, he sneers, he grimaces, he taunts, he flies through the air and tunnels through the garbage mountain, he gets stuck in chimneys and blown up in explosions, and all the time. Well, he's not Jim Carrey. After John Travolta and Robin Williams were paid many millions to appear inside unrecognizable makeup in Battlefield Earth and Bicentennial Man, respectively, did it occur to anyone that when audiences go to a movie with a big star, they buy their tickets in the hopes of being able to see that star? Carrey has hidden behind invented faces before, in The Mask, for example, but his Grinch, with his pig snout nose and Mr. Hyde hairdo, looks more like a perverse wolfman than the hero of a comedy. The movie uses gigantic sets, lots of special effects, and trick photography to create Whoville, which is inside a snowflake, and where all the Whos live in merry jollity, preparing for Christmas. The Grinch lives in a cave on the garbage mountain that towers over the town, brooding and gnashing and remembering old wounds and childhood hurts. Eventually, the happiness below is so unbearable to him that he descends on the town and steals all the Christmas presents, and only the touching faith of little Cindy Lou Who, Taylor Momsen, redeems him. But the general outlines of the story, expanded here, will be familiar from Dr. Seuss's book. What is strange is how the inspiration of his drawings has been expanded almost grotesquely into a world so unattractive and menacing. Red is the dominant color in the palette, not Santa red, but a kind of grungy, brownish red. So much of it we yearn to slake our eyes on green or blue. The film seems shot through a subtle filter that just slightly blurs everything, and the result is not cheerful. All of the characters, as I have mentioned, have noses that look like atrophied upturned pig snouts, which is nice if you like atrophied upturned pig snouts, but not if you don't. The balance is off. There should be more scenes establishing sympathy for the Grinch, fewer scenes establishing his meanness, more scenes to make the townspeople seem interesting, a jollier production design, and a brighter look overall. I am not a mind reader and cannot be sure, but I think a lot of children are going to look at this movie with perplexity and distaste. It's just not much fun. Adults may appreciate Carrey's remarkable performance in an intellectual sort of way and give him points for what was obviously a supreme effort, but the screenplay doesn't give the Grinch any help. Of course, I may be wrong. As the Grinch himself observes, one man's toxic sludge is another man's potpourri. Or vice versa, I'm afraid. Review: How the Grinch Stole Christmas. Ever since I started blogging, I wanted to try out different review formats. This ranged from long to short reviews, first impressions, and even a manga review. While game reviews, and more importantly, indie game reviews, are probably going to stay in focus for me personally on Indicator, I'd like to try the occasional odd one here and there with a book, show, or like in this case, a movie review. Today I wanted to talk about one of my favorite Christmas movies, Dr. Seuss' How the Grinch Stole Christmas, 2000. The movie is about the Grinch, who lives just outside of Whoville on a remote trash mountain and who hates Christmas. While the Whos are full of anticipation for the upcoming Christmas holiday, the Grinch is out for revenge instead. Starring Jim Carrey, Taylor Momsen, and Jeffrey Tambor, among others, this is basically the Dr. Seuss book turned into a full movie. The rhymes and sentences from the children's book got adapted into the movie well, although slightly changed at times, while story elements, like Cindy Lou Who being turned into the main character, have been changed to make up for the short source material. All in all, I feel like it's a good adaptation, although it struggles here and there to make full use of the concepts and ideas it touches on. The narrator, Anthony Hopkins, initiates the story with the words, "Inside a snowflake, like the one on your sleeve, there happened a story you must see to believe." The Whos are a jolly kind of seemingly pig-snouted people that live in Whoville and are eager to celebrate their favorite holiday. Marching with a band and swarming into the stores, everything seems to brim with life and joy. The only one who questions the mass of presents that people are buying is Cindy Lou Who, a young Who that not only likes Christmas but also ends up asking the important questions. As time goes on, she begins to question whether the Grinch is truly mean and evil, and if there's more to the story. As we find out, the Grinch was raised like any other child, but always seemed different, hating Christmas and having a beard at the age of 8. Being the target of bullying scarred him for life, which is why he now spends his time in solitude with his dog Max on a garbage mountain, dreading the upcoming 1000th jubilation. Jim Carrey is truly shining in his role as the Grinch. Bring the titular character to life. He's taunting and sneaking, sneering and snorting, dreading the day of Christmas, and really seems to be this mean-spirited mind that just seems to be there to ruin other people's days. All of this is directed well, and while I love his acting and the expressions that Carrey is able to pull off, I'm not entirely sure if it really was that important to focus more on his demeanor. I get it. The Grinch is supposed to be this bad green guy living alone while everyone seems jolly and cheerful in the city. The contrast is established well, and it works. But as time goes on, I would have loved to see some change. Instead, the movie focuses on the mean parts of the Grinch and his backstory whenever they show the Grinch. But the Grinch doesn't get all that much screen time to really add depth to the character. Most of the movie, after all, revolves around the Who's, and most importantly, Cindy. While she's adorable in her role and always curious about people's intentions and feelings, I just feel like the movie has not done enough with its characters. Cindy feels like more of a plot device than an actual figure in a story, let alone the main character. The Who's of Whoville, adults and children alike, are all dazzled and charmed by Christmas anticipation. They all just follow tradition and follow their leader, the antagonist of the story played by Jeffrey Tambor. Nothing seems to change. Everything is the same and it gets boring. The characters of the story shouldn't be as tolerant with the status quo. If I was a Who and if I was looking forward to the big day like that, I'd want to make it the best Christmas ever. I'd want to make it even better than before. The only character with intentions like that is Cindy, who joyfully nominates the Grinch as the cheermaster for the 1000th Whobilation. The audacity! I like it! While it's an interesting twist in the story, it seems as if Cindy is only there so that the story can move forward. Without Cindy, the Grinch wouldn't have come down over Christmas. Without Cindy's goodwill and intentions, the Grinch wouldn't have been driven to the point where he'd steal the Christmas presents. Without Cindy, the Who's in Whoville wouldn't have understood that Christmas isn't all about presents and spending money, but rather about spending this great holiday with the people you love and appreciate. Cindy's a great character. Don't get me wrong, and Taylor Momsen did a great job bringing life to this pig-snorted girl. But there could have been more. There could have been a change in the people at an earlier time in the movie. When the Grinch finally arrives to get his award, the Who's are frightened by his appearance and his manners, but all of a sudden they just flick the switch and they accept that he's just as much a Who as everyone else. Being a kids' movie, I understand that the gags and gimmicks, the jokes and little sketches, and all of that are important to fill out air, but I feel like the movie could have had so much more than just that. There could have been more change, more on the topics of what is Christmas about and what makes a good Who, but instead, it just falls flat. Adults will enjoy the occasional innuendo or dark joke here and there that completely went over my head when I watched it ages ago. Christine Baranski, playing Martha May Whovier, really adds a different flavor to the movie. But personally speaking, while I love the movie and the characters, I would have wished for more. I would have liked it if they went more in depth with how the Grinch, the titular character, feels and changes, but they ended up merely touching on it instead, leaving much to desire for boring people like me. The plot itself works, though. It's a great movie. It made me chuckle plenty of times, and the occasional song here and there really made it all the move enjoyable. The world of the Who's and the Grinch is wonderfully Christmassy and glim and bright, but while red is one of the main colors, it's not as bright and shiny as Santa's clothes, but rather dark and muddy, showing that there is more potential for this Christmas to become better, and showing that there lies more under the wrapping paper and mistletoes. All in all, a great movie to watch with your loved ones in this wonderful time, despite the criticism that I had at the depth of the topics and subjects that the movie touches on. I'd really recommend it to you if you're still searching for a great movie to watch. It's 20 years old at this point, and, believe me, or not, Miss Magi hasn't seen it until last Saturday, and she loved it to bits. I haven't really thought about how to write movie reviews before. I would have thought that it works the same as with game reviews, where you start at one point, start writing, look into your notes, and just end up finishing it up eventually. Movie reviews are different, as you need to be more aware of spoilers and what you can talk and cannot talk about. With Christmas movies, you basically know how it's going to turn out anyway, so that's a different story. But personally speaking, I'm not entirely sure if my thoughts on it aren't potentially too analytical, or if they maybe even go too far into the interpretation. After writing it up, I wanted to see if Peril has written about this movie in particular yet, but apparently there is no post on it available just yet. As far as other reviewers out there go, I don't really like the style of many others and hence just didn't check on other bloggers, but I'm sure there will be plenty of critics out there just waiting to give me feedback on my first ever movie review. I'd appreciate that a ton. In hindsight, this post turned out quite well. It doesn't really feature any spoilers, and while it doesn't go too in-depth on the movie's score and the graphics and all of that, I feel like it's still a solid review. Maybe straying away from the visible and audible was a good choice after all, though, as I have no clue about components and that kind of stuff. And yes, I criticized the story somewhat, and I referred to the Who's as pig-nosed characters. But I feel like you can criticize something and still like it. And the Who's do kind of look like they've got inverted pig snouts on their faces. I mean, they're adorable, but also kind of weird, which is great. Anyways, I hope you're having a great time. Stay safe and healthy, and regardless of what's going on and how 2020 has been, I wish you a few happy holidays, a Merry Christmas, and a Happy New Year. Am I the only person who finds it fascinating when an adaptation gets stretched out to be far longer than its source material? Yeah, it usually results in a disaster. The only example I can think of where it worked was the Final Fantasy VII remake, and even that had its problems as a result of stretching 4 hours worth of content into 40 hours. But it has always fascinated me how they go about doing it. Do they just stretch out already existing moments? Do they add plot points? Do they elaborate on things that are only hinted at in the source material? This version of How the Grinch Stole Christmas does all of this, which does, of course, have its consequences, but I can't bring myself to get mad at this movie because it does it all surprisingly well. Here, we have a 69-page book with only 155 words in it. This article will probably take you longer to read, that has been stretched out into an hour and 50-minute long movie. The original 1966 adaptation was 26 minutes long, and only around 26 minutes of this movie is a straight-up adaptation of its source material. The rest of it are additional scenes which explain every little detail of this world. Some of it works, and some of doesn't. So, let's get into what this adaptation succeeds at and what it fails at. As per usual, I won't be getting into spoilers until the spoiler section. The premise is the same as every Grinch adaptation. The Grinch hates Christmas, whilst all the Who's love it, so the Grinch decides to steal it from everybody. That's what the book and original 1966 adaptation shows us. This movie attempts to explore why the Grinch hates Christmas by having the majority of the movie take place before the events of the original. This movie builds up to the titular event, giving us around 80 minutes of brand new content, which actually kind of works. The Grinch's reasoning for hating Christmas has always been kind of shit. He didn't like how loud it all was. Building up a better reason for him to hate it could make him a more understandable protagonist. With the extra time, they could actually give him some real character development. The movie does attempt to do both and kind of works, but it also could have done it a lot better. Let's start with some straight-up positives before we move on to the flaws and all that's in between. The Grinch costume and makeup are amazing. It deserved its Best Makeup Award at the Oscars. It's one of the few times where they managed to truly transform a famous actor using makeup. He looks like the Grinch, not Jim Carrey. Talking about Jim Carrey, he does an amazing job as the titular character. Yeah, his performance is over the top and stupid, but that's probably the best way to do the Grinch. He's entertaining and is clearly putting his all into his performance. I honestly can't think of a better actor to play the Grinch than Jim Carrey. The set is great. They use a lot of practical effects, and it really pays off, making the world feel real. The general design of everything is amazing. This truly does feel like a wacky-ass Dr. Seuss world, and I wouldn't want it any other way. The Steele's Christmas scene isn't as boring as it is in the original, because Jim Carrey is so fucking crazy in this. I also don't think it goes on as long. I didn't time it, but it didn't feel as long. Also, there's less dog abuse in this version of the scene, which is always a plus. Yeah, that's about it for outright positives. The movie doesn't know how separated from reality it wants to be. It can't choose between making the world and people in it feel real or cartoony, so everyone just does what they want. Christine Baranski as Martha plays the horniest character ever put to screen and seems to always be on the verge of orgasm. Definitely a very exaggerated performance that wouldn't exist in the real world. But then, Bill Irwin as Cindy Lou's father seems to be playing it completely straight. Taylor Momsen as Cindy Lou doesn't really give a performance. She just stands there, not really reacting to anything. I know she's a child, but holy shit is she bad in this. Jeffrey Tambor as the mayor seems to shift between cartoony and normal. The performances are all over the place. Yes, of course, characters should be different. That's not what I'm complaining about. You just expect them to be in the same reality as one another, because nobody feels like they exist in the same reality. It all feels very disjointed. The script is kind of a joke. Jim Carrey makes it work because he's playing such a fucking weird character that it doesn't matter what he says. It seems like something that could come out of his mouth, but it does stop a lot of moments that aren't cantered on the Grinch from working. Whenever anybody else says anything, it doesn't really work. Instead of stretching out already existing scenes, this adaptation instead opts to add additional backstory to the Grinch to fill up the runtime, which I think is probably the best way to go about making How the Grinch Stole Christmas a longer story. Most of the additional scenes actually add to the story. There isn't much pointless additions that are just there to waste your time. Yeah, that exists, but it isn't that noticeable. By giving the additional length a purpose to explore the Grinch's backstory and why he hates Christmas, most scenes don't feel pointless. I prefer this version of "You're a Mean One, Mr. Grinch." It doesn't get into what is essentially yo mama jokes and just sounds better. It's not going to be something I listen to on my own, but I actually enjoyed this version of the song when it played in the movie. If you want an exploration of the Grinch as a character which does have many, many problems, but is still overall a more positive than negative experience, I would recommend this, 6/10. I'll discuss if I like this one more or less than the original in tomorrow's review of The Grinch by Illumination, where I'll do a definitive Grinch ranking, because apparently I hate myself enough to be doing that. On to spoilers. Okay, so why does the Grinch hate Christmas? Well, they give you a ton of reasons, which all would have worked much better if the movie didn't state that he has hated Christmas since he was a baby. The movie wants to have its cake and eat it. It wants to explore themes of nature versus nurture by pointing out that the Grinch doesn't become mean until everybody has bullied his appearance, but they also make him mean before that. He goes from hating Christmas at birth to hating it even more because of events. They really should have made the Grinch be like any other kid, but just get bullied so hard because of his appearance that he ends up hating everybody. Keep the Martha subplot as his reason for hating Christmas specifically. But I think if you made him love Christmas more than anybody else in Whoville before this event, his eventual hatred for the holiday would have meant something. The movie wants to explore the Grinch's backstory and gets so close to telling us something important, but just falls short. I like it, how he hates how materialistic Christmas has become. That's why when he finds out everybody can have Christmas without material goods, he changes. His hatred of the commercialized side of Christmas makes sense as well. It comes from the gift he put love into, for Martha being laughed at by everybody else who brought expensive material goods. That and the fact that everything the Whos throw away comes to him. It proves to him that they don't need these goods, that they'll just throw them away later. It's good character building. By making this one of his main reasons for hating Christmas, it makes sense that he'd have a change of heart when he finds out the Whos don't need material possessions to be happy at Christmas. They've proven his philosophy completely wrong. It's one of the things this adaptation does better than the original. It truly explores why some Who's singing would have such an impact on the Grinch. The Grinch here is a much better character than in the original, so it was a bit jarring when they started to recreate the events on the original in live action. The Grinch suddenly becomes a much less complex character. for the sake of recreating a few scenes. It's really jarring. Um, the movie doesn't really feel like it's building up to the eventual stealing of Christmas. Yeah, it gives the Grinch more of a reason to hate Christmas. But any nuance the character had before is immediately removed when he needs to steal everything from Whoville without remorse. They created a pretty decent story about an outsider getting bullied for his appearances and realizing that he might as well be a monster, because that's what everybody sees him as, anyway, to a movie where he's just evil. Don't get me wrong, to some extent it was enjoyable seeing how they recreated these scenes in live action. I just think they should have made the Grinch be a tiny bit more conflicted. The movie really seems to want to have the friendship between Cindy Lou and the Grinch be the heart of the movie, but really fails. Yeah, she's the only one who cares about him, but by having him not care back until the last 5 minutes, it just doesn't work. They have a moment in the house, but by undercutting it by a joke, it doesn't work. If they just made the Grinch a little bit more reluctant to steal from her, it could have worked. How the Grinch Stole Christmas is a weird-ass movie. To be fair, the wonderful world of Dr. Seuss is built on its weirdness with bizarre locations, funny-looking characters, and nonsensical rhyming. It's what made his stories and art style so timeless in the decades they've inhabited elementary school libraries. But then along came Ron Howard. This sick son of a gun kicked the doors down at Universal Pictures, snorted a fat line of coke on the CEO's desk, then shouted to the heavens, "The Grinch is going to eat glass and commit domestic terrorism!" Universal then proceeded to cut him a check for $125 million. So who is the Grinch? Why does he want to steal Christmas? How does one even steal a holiday? Do the Who's down in Whoville recognize Jesus Christ as their Lord and Savior? To put it simply, Dr. Seuss's How the Grinch Stole Christmas is the story of the titular Grinch, an outcast who lives outside the small town of Whoville. Every year, the Who's down in Whoville put on an extravagant Christmas celebration, complete with feasts, singing, and loud musical instruments. Every year, it drives the Grinch crazy, so one year, he concocts a plan to steal their decorations, presents, and everything related to the holiday while they sleep. Assisted by his trusty dog Max and dressed as a discount Santa Claus, the Grinch successfully pulls off his holiday heist. When the Who's awaken, he expects to hear them cry out in sadness, but is surprised to still hear them singing. Shaken by the realization that Christmas is much more than decorations and gifts, the Grinch has a change of heart, returning the stolen goods and celebrating Christmas with the Who's for the first time. This was the original story created by Dr. Seuss in 1957, which was later adapted faithfully and wondrously into an animated television film with an iconic narration from the legendary Boris Karloff. This version of the story is so beloved and so perfect that it was hard to imagine how this story could be stretched into a feature-length film. Well, they did it, and there's a lot going on here. Let's start with the positives, with the biggest positive being Jim Carrey in his role as the titular green creature. Jim Carrey is one of those actors that has the potential to elevate a film beyond what was to be expected. He did this earlier this year with Sonic the Hedgehog, turning a by-the-numbers kids film into something I enjoyed more than I anticipated. Carrey does the same thing here, turning the sinisterly suave Grinch into a sassy, disgusting drama queen. His interpretation is loud, bombastic, and ever-quotable, as any image of Carrey is completely hidden under the impressive makeup and costume work. These elements are another positive, as the designs for the Who's and their little Whoville are creative and fairly faithful to the Seuss art style. Not to mention the soundtrack can be quite fun at times, with a fairly decent rendition of the classic You're a Mean One, Mr. Grinch. Then there's the script. Holy hell, do they get away with a lot in this film. There's some swearing, some sexual innuendos, and even a scene of a full-on swingers party in full swing. These choices are so left field and jarring, but as an adult who liked this kind of stuff, it's made rewatches since getting older all the more enjoyable. Not to mention that some of the writing is genuinely funny, credited in hand by Carrey's zany deliveries and mannerisms. The fact that this version of the Grinch has become a meme-like avatar for aging millennials in the past few years doesn't surprise me in the slightest. Despite these positives, my God, does this film give me a headache at times. Ron Howard must not have come down from that coke high from his barge inn at the Universal offices, because this film looks like it was shot by a madman. Jarring camera movements and Dutch angles that would make Battlefield Earth blush plague this film. It's very rare to see the camera sitting still for just a moment, as it's constantly moving about to keep up with the manic antics of the characters. I get that this is the Who's thing, but it's so much energy and honestly puts me on the Grinch's side most of the time. Everyone is shouting. There's seldom a moment of calm or relax. The visuals, while creative, can be such an eyesore at times. The lights and the colors can be borderline seizure-inducing sometimes, as I felt like I was slipping into madness after staring at the screen for too long. I said I liked the makeup done for the Who's prior, but I can't deny there's something a bit unsettling about their look. Somehow Cindy Lou Who escapes looking like a dog-man hybrid, which makes me think they just look more hellish as they get older. The basics are all there. Whoville loves Christmas. The Grinch, Jim Carrey, lives on a nearby mountain and hates it. He plots to steal all their holiday paraphernalia, but is stymied by little Cindy Lou Who, Taylor Momsen. Eventually, the Grinch learns to love Christmas too, and his heart grows larger. You know the book. But how do you stretch 24 pages with just over 1,300 words into a feature-length motion picture? Well, you add a handful of new characters and an unnecessary backstory for the main character. Did you ever wonder where the Grinch came from? Fuck no, you say. Anyway, he came down in a little bundle to the home of a pair of Who women and then got bullied so badly at school he ran away to the mountain where he now lives. Oh yes, and that bullying is what led him to hate Christmas. Don't you appreciate the rich nuance of Dr. Seuss's children's book better now? Rewatching this version of The Grinch was such a bizarre experience. The last time I'd seen it was around 22 years ago in the theater with my family. I was home on winter break during my freshman year of college. I did not enjoy it then, but I liked a few more things this time. The single shining spot, in my opinion, is Jim Carrey's utterly unhinged performance. This man is giving his fucking all, acting like they are holding him at gunpoint on set, and it's pretty much perfect. Before this, if you had imagined Carrey as the Grinch, it would have been close to what we got on screen. It reminds us how skillfully the actor uses his body as an instrument. Some pretty good physical comedy, a trait we seem to be losing as those sorts of feats are being accomplished with digital special effects. Where the movie falls apart is in every other department. I applaud the use of a physical setting with some elaborate production design. However, it looks really cheap. The Universal Islands of Adventure Seuss section could have been a stand-in for Whoville. Everything looks like a veneer of a small city, and it never feels like there is depth to the characters or setting. I'm not looking for Fellini here, but part of the appeal of Seuss is that his worlds are so fascinating to look at and surprise with their unconventional designs. The Grinch film is just a case of a studio presenting production design with some pictures from the books and telling them to make that. I didn't feel like the artists involved had much of a hand in building out what Seuss established, which made the movie's runtime drag on that much worse. More set pieces with the Grinch instead of backstory and subplots would have avoided this, but that's not what we got. Ironically, that is what they did with The Cat in the Hat, which didn't turn out well, so what the hell do I know, though I place that far more on the casting of Mike Myers. We'll see a theme throughout this A Very 2000s Christmas series we've just embarked upon, and it's very present in this movie. That is the aesthetic of the obnoxious. If you are old enough, then you can remember it. Found chiefly, but not exclusively, in children's entertainment, this is when storytelling elements seem amped up on too much caffeine, a mutation of the 1990s extreme tone, resulting in an over-fried brain melt of sensory overload. Fish-eye lenses and extreme close-ups, music that punctuated moments in a heavy-handed way. This was almost an attempt to layer the feel of a cartoon over live-action performances. You can partly blame Carrey for it with movies from the 1990s, like The Mask. Even as a teenager young adult, I hated this stylization, and rewatching the film confirmed that it had aged like spoiled milk. Give me the 1-2 punch of Chuck Jones's animation and Boris Karloff's narration any day. I get that for some millennials and Zoomers, this holds a nostalgic place in their hearts because they saw it at a very formative age, but Ron Howard's Grinch continues a long tradition of the director being responsible for just the most mid-tier dreck. Merry fucking Christmas, and there's more to come. There's a lot you can say about Dr. Seuss. The worlds in his books are creative. His works have inspired a generation of kids, and as far as adaptations go, they have a breed of notoriety to them. Movies like The Cat in the Hat, The Lorax, and others have been panned by critics and are popular among meme and internet circles. But the live-action How the Grinch Stole Christmas seems to be the least panned movie. I had fond memories of watching this at my grandparents' house when I was a kid. I would get most of the second act. But as I got older and obsessed with the nostalgia critic, I became more critical towards it. But as I've gotten older and discovered better critics, I thought it would be best to come back to this movie from my childhood. As the classic story says, every Who down in Whoville liked Christmas a lot, but the Grinch, played here by Jim Carrey, did not. After a chance encounter with the Green Curmudgeon, Cindy Lou Who, Taylor Momsen, becomes interested in knowing why he's the way he is. After interviewing other Whos, including Martha May Whovier, Christine Baranski, and Mayor Augustus Mayhew, Jeffrey Tambor. She learns that the Grinch's animosity for Christmas spurred from being ostracized and rejected during a class Christmas party. Despite that, she tries to invite him to the holiday jubilation. After that goes awry, the story follows the rest of the beats of the classic Dr. Seuss book. Most of the cast does an average job here. The Whos have their personalities that fit them well. As child actors go, Taylor Momsen does a solid job and brings an authentic performance to Cindy Lou Who. She wants to see the best in everyone and captures the Christmas spirit. Jeffrey Tambor plays the mayor as an asshole, in a way that allows for him to chew the scenery akin to Thomas F. Wilson's Biff Tannen in Back to the Future Part 2. But his scene chewing is nothing compared to Jim Carrey as the Grinch. Carrey brings his high energy that comes with all of his performances. Not a scene goes by where Jim Carrey is at his A-game and having the time of his life. Like many modern retellings of Dr. Seuss, most of the movie is padded with subplots and backstory to increase the running time. Here, however, doesn't feel as egregious as movies like The Cat in the Hat. The subplots add more to the story and reveal more about the characters, and the subtext condemning the Who's obsession with materialism, with the actual meaning of Christmas in being together with loved ones. Dr. Seuss's work has always been synonymous with zany designs and highly creative aesthetics, and that style can be seen in this movie. While the color palette feel drab for a movie based off a children's classic, the design of Whoville and the Grinch's lair are creative. Every scene has sets that seem like they would have been in the background of the beloved children author's illustrations. While I enjoy the 1966 animated special a little bit more, this version stands well on its own. The cast does a solid job, with Jim Carrey being a joy to watch. The design feels like something from Seuss's work, and the padding for the time doesn't feel like filler. And it may be the nostalgia talking, but the charm 11-year-old me had for it still shines in this film. How the Grinch Stole Christmas has been a holiday season television staple. The 22-minute cartoon, based on the book by Dr. Seuss and narrated by Boris Karloff, has enchanted multiple generations of children, not to mention adults, and even with its ready availability on video, it still draws a sizable viewing audience every time it is broadcast. With the possible exception of the Peanuts Christmas special, no other seasonal program is as beloved and respected as this venerable classic. So in deciding to transform it into a 90-minute live-action motion picture, director Ron Howard has taken a sizable risk. There are undoubtedly those who will view the movie as a sacrilege of the most heinous kind. To Howard's credit, he has worked hard to keep the spirit of the animated Grinch intact. The text of the Dr. Seuss book is in place, although a great deal has been added to pad out the running time. In addition, the songs from the TV show have also been incorporated into the film, although the movie version of You're a Mean One, Mr. Grinch could have used a little less livening up. The simple rendition in the cartoon is preferable. The bright, colorful set design impresses, effectively translating the happy hamlet of Whoville from the cartoon world to the fantasy reality one. Of course, one might legitimately ask why, if so much attention was being paid to replicating the animated look and feel in a live-action medium, this movie was deemed necessary in the first place. The answer, of course, is money. How the Grinch Stole Christmas is likely to make a lot of it. That doesn't mean it's a bad film. In fact, it's quite entertaining. But commercial, not creative or artistic, considerations have brought it to the screen. The movie opens with nearly 1 hour of background material about the Grinch and Whoville that was not in either Seuss's book or the TV special. We learn all sorts of interesting tidbits designed to fill in supposed holes in Grinch lore, not that anyone really noticed. We come to understand why the Grinch hates Christmas. It has more to do with bad childhood experiences than with a heart that's 2 sizes too small, why he has it in for the mayor of Whoville, and why little Cindy Lou, who finds his soft spots so easily. Finally, at about the film's 2/3 point, the narrative switches over to following the book letter for letter, and we get a strikingly faithful recreation of the cartoon. There is a difference in tone between the 2 portions of the film. The part that follows the book is smoother, has considerably more narration, and consistently rhymes, while the remainder has a tacked-on feel. Children, however, won't notice, and the shift isn't glaring enough that it will bother most adults, even those who have sat through the TV special countless times. Of course, How the Grinch Stole Christmas's big selling point isn't nostalgia or great production values, it's Jim Carrey. Buried beneath Rick Baker's flexible makeup, he's a dead ringer for the cartoon creature. But although he isn't physically recognizable, there's no doubt who's under all of the green latex and hair. Recently, Carrey has been working on developing a reputation as a serious actor, but in concert with Me, Myself, and Irene, How the Grinch Stole Christmas allows him to get back to the kind of antics that made him famous in the first place. His off-the-wall performance is reminiscent of what he accomplished in The Mask, except that here he never allows the special effects to upstage him. Carrey's Grinch is a combination of Seuss creation and Carrey's personality, with a voice that sounds far more like a weird amalgamation of Sean Connery and Jim Backus, Bond meets Magoo, than it does Karloff. The character to benefit the most from the fattened script is little Cindy Lou Who, played by charming newcomer Taylor Momsen. Cindy becomes the Grinch's advocate in Whoville, the only one who sees the goodness buried deep within. Like the 3 ghosts in Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol, she represents the catalyst that transforms the cold-hearted Grinch from a Scrooge into the holiday's biggest advocate and most devout celebrant. Momsen is wonderful in the part. She manages to be cute without being insufferable, a difficult task for a young actress who probably got the job because she was more adorable than the other would-bes vying for the role. Aside from Carrey and Momsen, the other actors don't leave an impression. Jeffrey Tambor plays the mayor of Whoville, a man whose grudge against the Grinch goes back to when they were both 8 years old. Christine Baranski is the woman who has had a secret crush on the Grinch since before his self-imposed exile to Mount Crumpet. And Molly Shannon and Bill Irwin play little Cindy's parents. The narration is spoken by Anthony Hopkins, who uses his rich voice to set a non-threatening tone. How the Grinch Stole Christmas is a fable. It is designed to be funny and uplifting, but never scary, no matter how frightening the title character might believe himself to be. Putting aside the question of whether the movie is necessary in the overall scheme of things, How the Grinch Stole Christmas represents a solid hour and a half of genuine family entertainment. Unlike most live-action movies making a similar claim, there is no toilet humor. Apparently, Dr. Seuss' Widow had something to do with that, making this a refreshingly clean comedy. For Carrey, whose caged energy is released, this falls just short of a tour de force. Last year, he became Andy Kaufman. This year, it's the Grinch. He brings animation to the live-action How the Grinch Stole. Christmas continued to draw holiday crowds while defeating another family-oriented film, The Emperor's New Groove. By this point, it surpassed Mission Impossible 2 to become the year's top-grossing film. The film closed on March First 2001 with a final domestic gross of $26,044. 1825 Box Office Mojo estimates that it sold over 48.1 million tickets in North Fight. America critical response on Rotten Tomatoes. How the Grinch Stole Christmas holds an approval rating of 49% based on 144 reviews and an average rating of 5,610. The website's critical consensus reads, Jim Carrey shines as the Grinch. Unfortunately, it's not enough to save this movie. You'd be better off watching the TV cartoon on Metacritic. The film has a weighted average score of 46 out of 100 based on 29 critics, indicating mixed or average reviews. Audiences polled by CinemaScore gave the film an average grade of on and a plus to F scale. Roger Ebert gave the film 2 out of 4 stars, referring to it as a dank, eerie, weird movie about a sour creature, and said there should be a jollier production design and a brighter look overall. It's just not much fun. Aber observed that Carrey works as hard as an actor has ever worked in a movie to small avail. Nevertheless, he decided that adults may appreciate Carr's remarkable performance in an intellectual sort of way and give him points for what was obviously a supreme effort. Paul Clinton of CNN declared that Carrey was born to play this role and noted that Carrey carries nearly every scene. In fact, if he's not in the scene, there is no scene. Owen Glaberman of Entertainment Weekly began his review of the film analyzing the Grinch's mischievously divided now I'm calm, now I'm a raving sarcastic psycho-personality, and summed up Carrey's Grinch as a slobby, self-loathing elite is ruled by the secret fear that he's always being left out of. Thanks, Glaberman expressed surprise at how affecting Carrey makes the Grinch's ultimate big-hearted turnaround as Carrey, the actor, sneaks up on Carrey the Wild Man, dervish in whichever mode he carries the movie. Peter Stack of the San Francisco Chronicle said nobody could play the Grinch better than Jim Carrey, whose rubbery antics and maniacal sense of mischief are so well suited to How the Grinch Stole Christmas. Dr. Seuss himself might have turned to Carrey as a model for the classic Carrigan had the actor been around in 1957. However, he wondered why Carrey made himself sound like Shan Kaner and warned that the character's intensity may frighten small children. James Berard Nelly of Real Views wrote that Carrey's off-the-wall performance is reminiscent of what he accomplished in The Maas, except that here he never allows the special effects to upstage him. Carr's Grinch is a combination of Seuss's creation and Carr's personality, with a voice that sounds far more like a weird amalgamation of Sean Kaner and Jim Backus than it does Carlo. He concluded that Carrey brings animation to the live action and surrounded by glittering fantastical sets and computer-spun. Special effect Carrey enables Ron Howard's version of the classic story to come across as more of a welcome endeavor than a pointless retreat. Some reviews were more polarized. Stephanie Zacher of Salon, in a generally negative review of the film, wrote that Carrey pulls off an admirable impersonation of an animated figure. It's fine as mimicry goes, but mimicry isn't the best playground for comic genius. Shouldn't we be asking more of a man who's very likely the most gifted comic actor of his generation? She concluded that in spite of a future terrific Aunt Lips, his jokes come off as nothing more than a desperate effort to inject some offbeat humor into an otherwise numbingly unhip, nonsensical, and just plain dull story. Todd McCarthy of Variety wrote, Carrey tries out all sorts of intonations, vocal pitches and delivery, styles his tough guy posturing reminding at times of Cagney and his sibilant S's recalling. Bogart his antique gesturing and face-making hit the mark at times, but at other moments seem arbitrary and scattershot. Furthermore, his free-flowing traits, full of catch-all allusions and references, are pitched for adult appreciation and look destined to sail right over the heads of pre. How the Grinch Stole Christmas film review. The Grinch Who Stole Christmas has a reason for growing up to be so bitter as a child. He was picked on for being green and having hair all over his body and a beard. Show me the child who would not pick on such a classmate, and I will show you baby Jesus. But if Dr. Seuss' How the Grinch Stole Christmas had only worked on that angle some more, had drummed up a little more sympathy for the Grinch, maybe we wouldn't want to pick on him too. This is a movie that devotes enormous resources to the mistaken belief that children and their parents want to see a dank, weird movie about a sour creature who lives on top of a mountain of garbage, scares children, is mean to his dog and steals everyone's Christmas presents. Yes, there's a happy ending and even a saintly little girl who believes the Grinch may not be all bad, but there's not much happiness before the ending, and the little girl is more of a plot device than a character. The Grinch is played by Jim Carrey, who works as hard as an actor has ever worked in a movie. To small all. A veil he leaps, he tumbles, he contorts, he sneers, he grimaces, he taunts, he flies. Through the air and tunnels, through the garbage. Mountain, he gets stuck in chimneys and blown up in explosions and all the time. Well, he's not Jim Carrey after John Travolta and Robin Williams were paid many millions to appear inside. Unrecognizable makeup in Battlefield Earth and Bicentennial Man, respectively. Did it occur to anyone that when audiences go to a movie with a big star, they buy their tickets in the hopes of being able to see that star? Carrey has hidden behind invented faces as before in The Mask, for example. But his Grinch, with his pig snout nose and Mr. Hyde hairdo, looks more like a perverse wolfman than the hero of a comedy. The movie uses gigantic sets, lots of special pet effects and trick photography to create Havo, which is inside a snowflake and where all the Whos live. In merry jollity, preparing for Christmas, the Grinch lives in a cave on the garbage mountain that towers over the town, brooding and gnashing and remembering old wounds and childhood hurts. Eventually, the happiness below is so unbearable to him that he descends on the town and steals all the Christmas presents and only the touching faith of little Cindy Lou, who redeems him. But the general outlines of the story expanded here will be familiar from Dr. Seuss's book. What is strange is how the inspiration of his drawings has been expanded almost grotesquely into a world so unattractive and menacing. Red is the dominant color in the palette. Not Santa red, but a kind of grungy brownish red. So much of it we yearn to slake our eyes on, green or blue. The film seems shot through a subtle filter that just slightly blurs everything, and the result is not cheerful. All of the characters, as I have mentioned, have noses that look like atrophied, upturned pig snouts, which is nice if you like atrophied, upturned pig snouts, but not if you don't. The balance is off. There should be more. Scenes establishing sympathy for the Grinch. Fewer scenes establishing his meanness, more scenes to make the town's people seem interested, jollier production design, and a brighter look overall. I am not a mind reader and cannot be sure, but I think a lot of children are going to look at this movie with perplexity and distaste. It's just not much fun. Adults may appreciate Carr's remark performance in an intellectual sort of way and give him points for what was obviously a supreme effort, but the screenplay doesn't give the Grinch any help. Of course, I may be wrong, as the Grinch himself observes one man's toxic sludge is another man's potpourri, or vice versa. I'm afraid other information about this film, ever since I started blogging, I wanted to try out different review formats. This ranged from long to short reviews, first impressions, and even a manga review, while game reviews are probably going to stay in focus for me. Personally, on IND Adder, I'd like to try the occasional odd one here and there with a book show, or like in this case, a movie review today. I wanted to talk about one of my favorite Christmas movies, Dr. Seuss's How the Grinch Stole Christmas. The movie is about the Grinch, who lives just outside of Have on a remote trash mountain, and who hates Christmas. While the Who are full of anticipation for the upcoming Christmas holiday, the Grinch is out for revenge. Instead, starring Jim Carrey, Taylor Momsen, and Jeffrey Tambor, among others, this is basically the Dr. Seuss book, turned into a full movie. The rhymes and sentences from the children's book got adapted into the movie well, although slightly changed at times, while story elements have been changed to make up for the short source material, all in all. I feel like it's a good adaptation, although it struggles here and there to make full use of the concepts and ideas it touches on the narrator. Anthony Hopkins initiates the story with the words, "Inside a snowflake, like the one on your sleeve, there happened a story you must see to believe, the Who are a jolly kind of seemingly pig-snouted people that live and have and are eager to celebrate their favorite holiday. Marching with a band and swarming into the stores, everything seems to brim with life and joy. The only one who questions the massive presents that people are buying is Cindy Lou Who, a young Who that not only likes Christmas, but also ends up asking the important questions as time goes on. She begins to question whether the Grinch is truly mean and evil, And if there's more to the story, as we find out, the Grinch was raised like any other child but always seemed different, hating Christmas and having a beard at the age of 8, being the target of bullying, scarred him for life. Which is why he now spends his time in solitude with his dog Max on a garbage mountain, dreading the upcoming 1000th hill. Jim Carrey is truly shining in his role as the Grinch, bring the titular character to life. He's taunting and sneaking, sneering and snorting, dreading the day of Christmas, and really seems to be this mean-spirited mind that just seems to be there to ruin other people's day. All of this is directed well, and while I love his acting and the expressions that Carrey is able to pull off, I'm not entirely sure if it really was that important to focus more on his demeanor. Like, I get it. The Grinch is supposed to be this bad green guy living alone while everyone seems jolly and cheerful in the city. The contrast is established well, and it works. But as time goes on, I would have loved to see some change. Instead, the movie focuses on the mean parts of the Grinch whenever they show the Grinch, but the Grinch doesn't get all that much screen time to really add depth to the character. Most of the movie, after all, revolves around the Who's, and most importantly, Cindy, while she's adorable in her role and always curious about people's intentions and feelings. I just feel like the movie has not done enough with its characters. Feels like more of a plot device than an actual figure in a story, let alone the main character. The H of Havo adults and children alike are all endazzled, and charmed by Christmas anticipation, they all just follow tradition and follow their leader, the antagonist of the story, played by Jeffrey Tambor. Nothing seems to change. Everything is the same, and it gets boring. The characters of the story shouldn't be as tolerant with the status quo. If I was a Who, and if I was looking forward to the big day like that, I'd want to make it the best Christmas ever. I'd want to make it even better than before. The only character with intentions like that is Cindy, who joyfully nominates the Grinch as the cheermaster for the 1000th H Beyond 80. I like it. While it's an interesting twist in the story, it seems as if Cindy is only there so that the story can move forward without Cindy the Grinch. Wouldn't have come down over Christmas without Cindy's goodwill and intentions. The Grinch wouldn't have been driven to the point where he'd steal the Christmas presents without Cindy the Who and wouldn't have understood that Christmas isn't all about presents and spending money, but rather about spending this great holiday with the people you love. And appreciate Cindy's a great character. Don't get me wrong, and Taylor Momsen did a great job bringing life to this pig. Snorted girl, but there could have been more. There could have been a change in the people at an earlier time in the movie when the Grinch finally arrives. To get his award, the Who's are frightened by his appearance and his manners, but all of a sudden they just flick the switch and they accept that he's just as much a Who as everyone else. Being a kid's movie, I understand that the gags and gimmicks, the jokes and little sketches and all of that are important to fill out air, but I feel like the movie could have had so much more than just that. There could have been more change, more on the topics of what is Christmas about and what makes a good Who. But instead, it just falls flat. Adults will enjoy the occasional innuendo or dark joke here and there. That completely went over my head when I watched it ages ago. Christine Baranski playing Martha Movier really adds a different flavor to the movie. But personally speaking, while I love the movie and the characters, I would have wished for more. I would have liked it if they went more in depth with how the Grinch, the titular character, feels, and Chang as, but they ended up merely touching on it, instead leaving much to desire for boring people like me. The plot itself works, though it's a great movie. It made me chuckle plenty of times, and the occasional song here and there really made it all the move enjoyable. The world of The Who and The Grinch is wonderfully Christmas, why and glim and bright, but while red is one of the main colors, it's not as bright and shiny as Santa's clothes, but rather dark and muddy, showing that there is more potential for this Christmas to become better, and showing that there lies more under the wrapping paper and mistletoes. All in all, a great, great movie to watch with your loved ones in this wonderful time. Despite the criticism that I had at the depth of the topics and subjects that the movie touches on, I'd really recommend it to you if you're still searching for a great movie to watch. It's 20 years old at this point, believe me or not. Emma hasn't seen it until last Sat, and she loved it to bit. Positive elements. A young girl believes the best of a social outcast, inspiring the residents of Have to not only invite the miserly Grinch to their celebration, but to make him honorary cheermeister instead of simply buying into local lore. Cindy L. seeks to understand the nasty all Grinch when her kindness appears to have backfired her faithful dad publicly, expresses his pride in her, just the same. The Grinch's change of heart reminds viewers that even the hardest heart can be redeemed by love. The Grinch reluctantly does the right thing by rescuing Cindy Lou from a frightening fate. The concluding message is that the real meaning of Christmas can't be found in materialism, however, spiritual content. Despite Cindy Lou's search for the true meaning of Christmas, she and the storytellers miss the Hope D diamond and settle for a cubic zirconium. Sure, kindness and community are better than cold-hearted commercialism, but that still misses the point, which is Jesus' birth. There's no mention of worship or church in this Christmas story. The warm fuzzies are all well and good, but once the Who tire of joining hands around their enormous Christmas tree in singing in unison, the Christ child will have no place in their celebration. It's a sad omission that has cheapened this otherwise noble story. Since the beginning, sexual content, the Grinch is thrown headlong into the shapely Martha, movier and land with his face buried in her cleavage. A subtle line suggests marital infidelity between a woman and her boss. Violent content. Many gags involve prankish mischief or flat-out vandalism. Physical humor, aside violence, is less of an issue than disrespect, the destruction of property, and several scenes that could frighten young children, such as when Cindy Lop falls headfirst into a sorting machine. Crude or profane language. The Grinch uses the expression bitching. He grabs mistletoe, waves it over his backside, and shouts, "Pucker up and kiss it." Drug or alcohol use. A swig of alcohol serves as fuel for a fire when the Grinch personally blow orcas a Christmas tree. Other negative elements. The Grinch lies to Cindy Lou. He eats broken glass mugs. A yoger shaves off the mayor's hair and belches green fumes into a man's face. Based on the way he mistreats his canine psychic, Max, the Grinch may get a visit from people for the ethical treatment of animals. In his sleep, the mayor kisses Max on the rear end during the song, "You're a Mean One, Mr. Grinch." The line, "You've got termites," and your smile gets extremely gross as the camera closes in on a bug-infested Grinch. And as the title suggests, he's a vengeful thief. Conclusion, Dr. Seuss. How the Grinch Stole Christmas definitely has its moment. It's fun to see classic cartoon bits replicated so faithfully with real actors, and just as Jim Carrey's unbridled shenanigans threaten to push this overstuffed sleigh of a movie past the brink, Anthony Hopkins' soothing narration reins it in nicely, if only the new material weren't so distracting. The backstory is occasionally interesting, but much of the information gleaned about the Grinch is dreary rather than uplifting. Like the song says, he's a mean one, which gets tiresome here because it's drawn out over more than 90 minutes before he has his life-changing epiphany. Meanwhile, his cave is Neo Oscar the Grouch. A flashback of the Grinch in grade school makes him look like a spray-painted Eddie monster, having a bad hair day. All in all, it was just a little too reminiscent of Tim Burton's work to earn an enthusiastic recommendation for families with young children. Having said that, teens should have no trouble with the film's tone or its content. Dr. Seuss' widow, 79-year-old Audrey Giselle, reportedly sent the script back several times before granting her approval. There were too many bathroom jokes, she told Newsweek. Good for her. This live-action Grinch is better for her involvement, and as Jim Carrey pictures go, it's downright wholesome still. It earned its PG rating for elements that will have many adults scratching their heads wondering if it was all really necessary. Special DVD features. The biggest theatrical hit of the 2000 holiday season boasts more than a dozen special features on DVD, but don't expect hours and hours of rewatchable fun. Sure, it's interesting to peek in on Charles Cruel's, whose school and SE layers of Rick Baker's latex makeup being applied to the cast, but the behind-the-scenes featurettes average a scant 6 minutes each, looking more impressive bulleted on the box cover than they do on the screen. The 3-minute gag reel of Bumble's miscues, blown lines, and playfulness isn't nearly as much fun as it should be, considering there's so much of Jim Carrey who is hilarious during the end credits of Liar Liar, and instead of a commentary track with director Ron Howard or producer Brian Grazer, we get a holiday recipe for onion sandwiches and shameless commercials for Universal's theme parks, hiding under the heading The Grinch's Special Offer, not the kind of bonuses likely to satisfy true videophiles. The Max's Playhouse area should be good for about 30 minutes of enjoyment. By 5 to 10-year-olds, Dress the Grinch is the DVD equivalent of Paper Dolls, as children can put the green guy in. Doctor's Dud's Letter, Hosen Pajamas E.T. A Rhyme Time, lets children fill in the blanks of 4 rhymes from the story by choosing a pair of words from an adjacent list. However, with the exception of a read-all-long storybook, they're not the kind of activities most kids will return to more than once. The unseeing director Ron Howard Dupp is the Grinch. This DVD's most memorable element is its 10-minute look at the film's visual effects work with over 600 effect shots, accounting for 43 minutes of screen time. There's a lot to talk about, and it's fascinating from the opening title. Sequence to clever tricks of the trade, it's the strongest of all of the bonus materials. There's also a terrific S component that offers blind or visually impaired viewers narrated descriptions of key visual element, a nice touch. But with those exceptions, The Grinch's special features are more ho than ho ho ho. This film, directed by Ron Howard. Screenplay by J.F.Y. Price, Peter S. Seaman, based on How the Grinch Stole Christmas by Dr. Seuss, produced by Ryan Grazer, Ron Howard, starring Jim Carrey, Taylor Momsen, Jeffrey Tambor, Christine Baranski, Bill Irwin, Molly Shannon, cinematography Don Peterman, edited by Dan Hamley, Mike Hill, music by James Harrer, production company Imagine Entertainment, distributed by Universal. Pictures release dates November 8, 2000, Los Angeles, November 17, 2000, United States. Running time 105 minutes, country United States, language English, budget $123 million, box office $45.89. The Grinch Stole Christmas movie, and some information about it. How do you like our today's video? Please let us know by commenting, and if you like this video, please like it, share it, and thanks for watching.